Hello, and welcome to the chapter discussing a beginner's guide to eating healthy. And let me start by sharing my screen. And as you may recall from previous discussions, my name is Toni Gist, and I'm a professor at the University of Illinois, and I'm walking you through basic healthy eating. And when we start talking about basic healthy eating, there's a lot of information on social media. In fact, there's one gentleman who's gotten quite a bit of press. He is called the Liver King. And the Liver King is a social media and fitness influencer promoting ancestral living, meaning living as our ancestors or again, caveman like individuals lived. And he regularly eats a very high fat diet, high protein diet, and he promotes the consumption of raw, yes, not cooked meat and raw organs as a part of his diet. Well, I think research has shown us that this may not be the best dietary pattern for everyone. Oh, and by the way, steroids also help with his stature, but he doesn't actually promote that one. So, what does science say? What do you believe? Do you believe his diet is healthful just because if you look at a picture of him, he is someone who has lots of muscles? Is that what healthful means? If you think back on what we've discussed before, I want you to reflect on what a healthful diet looks like. And as we dive into the topic more, we've got some learning objectives. The first one is explain the 5 characteristics of a healthy or healthful diet. Distinguish between energy dense and nutrient dense foods. Further discuss how to interpret a nutrition facts panel, compare and contrast nutrient content claims and health claims, and lastly, design a basic healthy eating plan. So we'll dive into the first learning objective by listing the 5 characteristics of a healthy or healthful diet with a short description next to each characteristic. So the first one is going to be adequacy, and this simply means you're getting enough of the essential nutrients. And this might be a refresher or reminder from things that we had discussed before. Because if you recall the definition of essential, it means that it's a nutrient that we have to have in our diet. And if we don't have it in adequate amounts, we have a nutrient deficiency. We also want to have variety. We want to choose different foods every single day. We want balance. What that means is we want to have each of the food groups or categories that are represented appropriately without too much of one or too little of another, displacing that balance. And at the end of this presentation or discussion, we're going to showcase many different dietary plans that each have its own food group or category that you can place your foods into. We also have moderation, and moderation means that we want portion control with an individual foodstuff. And we've got an example we'll be discussing as well. We also want nutrient dense foods with high amounts of vitamins and minerals or micronutrients relative to the calories themselves. So when we're discussing a healthy diet, it can be a little confusing because a healthy diet does not look the same for everyone. With an individual who has advanced and uncontrolled Crohn's disease, they might not be recommended to consume leafy green vegetables because it can actually cause little microabrasions on the inside of the intestine and cause a Crohn's flare up. Also, most of these dietary plans that we're going to be discussing at the end of this discussion are going to include whole grains. Well, someone who has celiac disease may or may not be able to consume whole grains as healthfully as someone else. And individuals with type 2 diabetes might have specific recommendations, especially if they're having a difficult time regulating their blood glucose levels. So the 5 characteristics that we discussed help us understand the principles so that we can apply them to everyone in a very personalized way. So even though we have those 5 principles, they are going to be changed a little bit based on your own health goals and your own health characteristics. When we continue on to discuss learning objective 1, we might want to explain why meal prepping with the exact same breakfast, exact same lunch, exact same dinner may not be best. Well, like we have mentioned before, meal prepping often involves preparing meals in bulk, meaning you've got, 8 chicken breasts you're cooking. You've got 5 pounds of broccoli you're cooking, and then placing portions into the refrigerator for use later in that week. That's the most traditional meal prep definition. But when we discuss this, what principle of a healthy diet is missing in this scenario? Well, If you said that the foods aren't mixed up every day, therefore there's not as much variety, you are correct. So if we have a meal that is a little too high in protein, but a little too low in vitamin K, then that disparity gets amplified, amplified, amplified every single meal that you consume, meaning that that disparity gets worse and worse. And so this could impact a person's ability to meet their nutritional needs, because if you meal prep and again, you're just a little bit low in something and a little bit high in something else, it's going to have a diet that's kind of displacing other things that you might have in a more varied diet. We also want to discuss how maybe it may not be best to consume in abundance or too much of something like broccoli, even though it's healthful in moderation. So I've got a video of my two beautiful children, and they love Brussels sprouts. They absolutely adore them. But I've discussed with them that too much of anything can be harmful. So here we've got this video of my kids fighting over Brussels sprouts. And if they were to consume 4, 5, 6 servings of Brussels sprouts, what problems can occur if overconsumed? Well, if you're someone who is like, oh my gosh, they would have so much fiber in their intestine that not only would they have a situation where they are having flatulence or lots of gas that's produced, they might even have some like diarrhea or really fast transit of their digesta through their system and into the toilet, which is uncomfortable. So when we discuss foods like broccoli, yes, consume them, definitely consume them, but have them what we call in moderation with appropriate amounts. Because when we overconsume anything, it can cause problems. We had even discussed before how water, if overconsumed, can even cause death. So when we talk about Brussels sprouts, though, there might be other individuals that it might be contraindicated or not recommended for. Think about it. If you're someone who's a pre-nursing student or pre-med, you might be like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure at all. Well, let's reflect back on things you might know before even diving into this chapter. So you might know that Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and other leafy green vegetables are high in vitamin K. Vitamin K has the job of helping with coagulation or clotting in that little coagulation cascade. There are components in there that vitamin K is reliant upon. If you overconsume vitamin K, and if you're someone who has a history of strokes and you're being prescribed something like warfarin or Coumadin to decrease blood clots in your body, you might not be recommended to have an abundance of things like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, or other foods that are high in vitamin K. So even something that is very healthful, like broccoli, if overconsumed even in a healthy population, can cause gastrointestinal distress, and it might even be contraindicated for other individuals who might be consuming certain medications. So this is why I tell you, think about food like it's a medication. It can help decrease disease state, or it can cause its own disease issues or dis-ease issues if not handled properly. So again, here you can see my kids fighting over the Brussels sprouts. My son's saying he's having it in moderation. It's actually pretty funny. So as we continue on, the World Health Organization has some very strong thoughts on healthy dietary patterns. And so you can use this QR code and you can learn more about it. But to give you a summary, a healthy diet helps protect against malnutrition in all of its forms. Well, that seems to make sense. It's like, what? This is not huge news, but as they go on, to say, again, we want meals that are properly planned. And they even say that supplements are not needed if that occurs, at least in most populations. There are exceptions to that rule. I always encourage you to discuss with your health provider and a clinical registered dietitian if supplements are needed for you. But most of the time, if your diet is balanced properly and you don't have any diseases that we're considering, then you are likely able to get a fantastic, balanced, and healthy diet if planned properly. And they also say a healthy diet helps protect against things that are non-communicable diseases. So if you don't know what an NCD is, or a non-communicable disease is, things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, stroke, or even select cancers are what we might consider a NCD. If we learn a little bit more, they recommend, and again, an approximate ratio here where we've got approximately half of our calories from carbohydrates, approximately 15 to 25% of our calories from proteins, and less than 30% of our calories from lipids or fats. And so with this breakdown, they also go on and give us a little bit more information that not only do we have less than 30% of our calories from lipids or fats, we also want less than 10% of our calories, which is again, the energy in our food, from freer added sugars. And those freer added sugars are a component or a subdivision of total carbohydrates. So even though we're supposed to consume a lot of carbohydrates, we want to have those carbohydrates in the form of natural fibers, natural starches, and natural sugars, such as those carbohydrates that are in fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and even whole grains. And that is why they recommend those foods on a daily basis. They also say we should have at least 5 portions of fruits and vegetables daily. So these are not big wow moments for many of you. Most of you have heard this before, but I do want to bring it up to you so that you can consider this as you start reflecting on your own diet. We also have the definition of nutrient density and energy density. So when we're talking about energy density and energy dense foods, those are things, again, energy is calories and density is the relative amount in a volume. So energy density is calculated by dividing the calories. So we'll say 100 calories in a serving or in the grams of the food stuff. So the more calories per gram, the more energy dense. So things that are high energy density foods might be candy bars, hard candy, fried foods, nuts, dried fruit, and even something that is very well known for being healthful, like salmon, still has a lot of calories per gram because it is very, very high in lipids. So if you're trying to figure out how to spot them easily, so explain what the energy dense foods have in common and how you can spot them easily. Well, high energy density foods are lower in water, and water is a calorie-free food, nutrient, and it dilutes out the calories per gram. So something that has more water is going to be lower in energy density. Something that has less water or a foodstuff that is more dry is going to be higher in energy density. So things that are very dry or have lower water content, you can think about them as things that have a longer shelf life, even when the package is opened. So here we have nuts, dried fruits, etc. on the right-hand side where you can see this picture. Well, that is going to be an example of something that, again, is very low in water. So you open your package of nuts and it is still good to go for a long time afterwards. High energy density foods can also be higher in fat, like we had mentioned the salmon. So the reason that they are higher in energy density is that fat contains 9 calories per gram. So high fat foods are very energy dense, even the healthy ones. So these nuts are another example of, again, something that is high in fats per serving or per gram. And so these high fat foods, every bite you take with them, they don't fill up a lot of space in your belly or in your stomach. However, they do lend a lot of calories. So let's ask a question. Which of the following foods is lowest in energy density? Is it dried apricot fruit, cold Bud Light beer, broiled salmon, cheddar cheese, or whole grain crackers? And if you said that cold Bud Light, you are correct. It's lowest in energy density because of the fact that it contains quite a bit of water per serving, or again, a lot of water per gram. And so for every sip you take, most of that is water. So even though it doesn't have a lot of vitamins and minerals, and it's not known for being as healthful as it could be, it's definitely something that is lower in energy density or takes up more space in your stomach as you take each sip, especially relative to its calories. As we continue on, we're going to discuss nutrient density and discuss nutrient dense foods. And nutrient dense foods contain higher amounts of vitamins and minerals, or the micronutrients, relative to their overall calories. So, like I said, it's more micronutrients per calorie. And foods that are high in nutrient density include things like Brussels sprouts, like we had discussed before, broccoli, spinach, blueberries, blackberries, lentils, and more. So these foods have a lot of vitamins, a lot of minerals, especially relative to their overall calories. And you might wonder, how can I spot those nutrient-dense foods that have things in common? And so these nutrient-dense foods are often plant-based, which means that they are things that have, again, they come from the soil, they're not animal-based, they're not highly refined, and they can be lower in calorie and brighter in color. So things like deep green leafy vegetables are very, very high in nutrient density. Then we have our bright colored or dark colored berries, very high in nutrient density. As we move down, just in general, our legumes are still high in nutrient density, but they're lower than those deep green leafy vegetables or berries. Then we have starchy fruits and vegetables. And at the bottom of our nutrient dense food pyramid, which is kind of upside down, we have foods that are lower in micronutrients or lower in those vitamins and minerals and higher in fats. And if we're going to discuss something further, we want to discuss this Andy score with respect to nutrient density. The Andy score is an aggregate nutrient density index. And what it does is it rates foods on a scale of from 1 to 1,000 based on nutrients per calorie or vitamins and minerals per calorie. So I'm going to ask you to use this QR code or look up Andy scores in general and reflect. How do your step 3 foods rank on the Andy scale? And then maybe share with a friend, maybe share with us, maybe share with yourself by writing it in your book itself. But definitely reflect on this and think about how that can be applied. As we continue on to learning objective 3, we'll start with 3A, where we're explaining what nutrient facts panels are and what foods require them. So a nutrient facts panel or a nutrient facts label communicates important information about a consumer's food. So things like serving size, calorie count, the amount of fats that are there, and specifically subdivision of fats like saturated and trans fats that have negative health implications. We also have total carbohydrates. In addition, we have some subdivisions. We have fibers, which are healthful and recommended to be consuming more. And we have sugars. In addition to that, we have added sugars, which are in there. We also have vitamin D, which is a micronutrient of concern, as well as other minerals like calcium, iron, and potassium, which are minerals or other micronutrients of concern. So there's a cute little video from the FDA that says the new nutrition facts label, the latest changes. And so you can kind of watch this, and they have the different individuals walking down, kind of showcasing their nutrition facts label. And so it's cute where they're talking about how, again, we've changed up the micronutrients in part. We've got the calories, which are listed more boldly. We have changes to the daily value recommendations. So if you want to check this out further, I encourage you to check out these short little videos from the FDA. But to put it more plainly in this particular discussion, we want to explain how to interpret the new nutrition facts panel with respect to serving size. The serving size gets real. So the serving size is based on now on what a person consumes rather than this ideal serving size. We're trying to be more realistic. Before, we used to say that in one package of ramen noodles, there were 2 servings. Well, how many of you opened up your ramen noodles and were like, you know what? This is a lot of ramen noodles. I'm going to split it in half and I'm going to share it with my friend. Probably very few of you, if any of you. So not only are the serving sizes more realistic, we also want to show you on the new nutrition facts panel on the right-hand side that calories are listed much larger. So it's easier to read the calorie values because that text is larger. Also, we have updated daily values. So the grams, micrograms, international units that we were recommending before have been updated based on new nutrition recommendations. And if we have less than 5% of that updated daily value, it's considered low in a nutrient. If we have greater than 20% of the updated daily value listed, it is going to be high rich in or an excellent source of a nutrient. So we also have updated lists and values with respect to the nutrients. So the nutrients of greatest concern, or those micronutrients of greatest concern, have been updated to include vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. You can look at older labels. So if something's in your cupboard and it has vitamin A on it, or vitamin C on it, chances are it has that original or that older label, and it might be a food that might be expired. So check those expiration dates definitely. And if you're someone who wants to learn a little bit more about interpreting that new label, the World Health Organization recommends to consume vegetables. Vegetables are potassium rich, and this might be one of the reasons that potassium is one of the nutrients of greatest concern and new to the label. We're not consuming enough vegetables. So we want to make sure that individuals know what it is that they should be consuming, as well as what they might be deficient in. Less than 10% of the calories should come from free or added sugars. And you might wonder, well, why? Why should that happen? Well, this video here explains it, where it talks about the new nutrition facts panel includes added sugars. And so they talk about how these added sugars are right here on the label itself. And with those total sugars and those added sugars, it gives you a better insight as to whether your food is heavily processed and whether those sugars are displacing other nutrients as far as calories are concerned. We also want you to understand nutrient content claims. And so here we have various different gallons of milk. You can see the 2% milk, the 0% milk, the 1% milk, the whole milk. What does that all mean? Well, skim milk or 0% milk means that it can use the claim, or the nutrient content claim, fat-free, because fat is a nutrient or a nutrient class. Therefore, fat-free that skim or 0% milk can use is going to be a nutrient content claim that would be accurate for that food stuff. We also have 1% milk, which is what we call low in fat. And so it meets the government guidelines for making that claim of low in fat. Again, nutrient content claim because fat is there. We also have 2% milk, which is reduced fat. And you might say, well, what is it reduced from? Well, it's reduced from the whole milk. Whole milk is where it came from a cow. It has been processed for safety. In addition, vitamin D has been added into whole milk, as well as all the other milks that you would see at the store in a traditional gallon jug. So whole milk has the most fat, pretty much the same amount of fat as you might have in a traditional, like if you were to milk a cow and drink it straight from a cup. Reduced fat is 2%, low in fat is 1%, and fat-free is skim. As we continue on, you might see terms like more, fortified, enriched, added, extra, or plus. So let's kind of tease out what that means. Fortified means that a nutrient is added that was not naturally in the food stuff. So if you were to be someone who found a cow and you're like, you know what, I'm thirsty for some milk, and then you go and squeeze the milk into your mouth itself, there's not much vitamin D in there. So, but we also realize that vitamin D helps with calcium absorption and health in general, and we were not having enough of it in certain populations. So we fortified milk with vitamin D. We also have this term enriched, and enriched means the food stuff has been taken from its natural state, like this wheat in the upper right-hand corner, and then it was processed. And in that processing, we might have removed certain vitamins, minerals, or other items, and those items can then be added back in. So these nutrients have been returned to the food stuff that was lost in processing. Things like more, added, extra, or plus means that it was added to a level of, again, over 10% of the daily value if it's going above and beyond that natural food stuff. Health claims are a little bit different. Health claims actually make a claim based on something like a disease or a health-related condition. So some health claims might be something like on the left-hand side here where it says can lower cholesterol. They're limited to claims about disease risk reduction. They can't say it cures anything because, again, other than a deficiency, our nutrients aren't going to cure any chronic health condition. With these health claims, they cannot be claims about the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, or treatment of the disease, and they are required to be reviewed and evaluated by the FDA, or the Food and Drug Administration, before they can use them. If we continue on, we've got learning objective 5A, where we're designing a basic and healthy eating plan. And so we have several different eating plans we're going to discuss: the Mediterranean diet or eating plan, the DASH diet, the My Plate, food focused, that's plant focused, flexitarian diet, and a healthy eating plate from Harvard. There are many, many, many more basic and healthy eating plans, but what I want you to do is focus on these ones and realize these aren't all the plans out there, number one. And number two, all of these are helpful for someone, but some of these may not be recommended for another person. So you really have to understand your own nutrient needs, whether you're someone who's bleeding or not bleeding, whether you're someone who's growing or not growing, whether you're working out for hypertrophy or an increase in muscle deposition. All of these things are going to have an impact on what dietary plan you choose, but I do want to let you know that there's so many out there that are recommended by dietitians and nutrition experts. So one of these is the Mediterranean diet or eating plan. And this is inspired by the eating habits and traditional food that's typical of southern Spain, southern Italy, Crete, Greece, and formulated in the early 1960s. And it's distinct from the Mediterranean cuisine, which covers the actual cuisines of the Mediterranean countries. So this Mediterranean diet really focuses on this pyramid here, where daily exercise and weight control is the base of that pyramid. So I've gone to Greece and taken students there. I've gone to Spain and taken students there. And the one thing my students are surprised about, is that in these locations that we've gone to, walking, hiking, moving things around with your body is more expected than driving all over the place or getting transported by other means. So definitely exercise is key here. We want whole grains as a component, if at all possible. Again, if you're celiac, that's a different discussion. Also, plant oils are celebrated, things like cold pressed extra virgin olive oil. Again, with my study abroads, we even did like oil tastings where you could pick up on different notes. It was fantastic. Rich in vegetables, contains fruits. There are nuts and legumes. Fish, poultry, and eggs are a part of it. And dairy, or if you're not having dairy, a supplement that's going to help you meet your vitamin D and calcium needs. And sparingly use white starches like white potatoes, white rice, and sparingly use other meats like ground beef and things like pork, and sparingly use butter. So this Mediterranean diet doesn't seem to be so scary, nor does it seem to be something that most people can't achieve. This looks fantastically helpful to me. And in fact, for myself, I'm an omnivore, meaning I consume all different things that are out there. I don't restrict my diet in any way as far as different food groups or foodstuffs. And I'm also someone who enjoys all of these foodstuffs. And it even allows you to have a little alcohol in moderation, if appropriate. For me, a glass of wine with dinner is fantastic. As we continue on, we have this DASH diet, and the DASH diet is a dietary approach to stop hypertension. And the plan recommends eating vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. Similar to the Mediterranean diet, it includes fat-free or low-fat dairy, fish, poultry, beans, nuts, and vegetable oils. So again, very similar to the Mediterranean diet or plan. It limits foods that are high in saturated fat, such as fatty meats, full fat dairy products, and tropical oils such as coconut, palm kernel, and palm oils, as those are more saturated and they're not as healthful as things like that cold pressed extra virgin olive oil. And we want to limit sugar sweetened beverages and sweets. So the DASH diet says a little bit of like, eat this and maybe limit this. They're not saying you can't have any of these things like the fatty meats, the full fat dairy, the sweetened beverages, the sweets, or the sodium, but they're saying just have it in moderation. And most other foods are available and on the table for you so long as you're having lower sodium, lower sweets, lower saturated fats. We also have My Plate, and My Plate states that it's important to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, grains, protein foods, and dairy or fortified soy alternatives on a regular basis. And when you're deciding what to eat or drink, choose options that are full of nutrients or nutrient dense. And they want you to make every bite count, which means they want foods that are going to be lower in energy density. So you're going to, and higher in vitamins and minerals, or higher in nutrient density. So they want you to lean towards those fruits and vegetables like we had discussed before. If you want to learn more about My Plate, you can click right here and learn a lot more about it. It's fantastically helpful. We also have a plant-focused flexitarian diet, and some of the principles include consuming protein from plants instead of animals, eating mostly fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains. Are we noticing some trends here? It's a little bit different than like the Liver King, just throwing that out there. Eating the least processed, most natural forms of food, limiting sugar and sweets. A lot of overlap with these different food plans. Don't you notice that? And we also have the Healthy Eating Plate from Harvard, which creates healthy, balanced meals for you. So similar to My Plate, a little bit like the Mediterranean diet, but more unique as far as the visual depiction of it. This has a main message to focus on diet quality. So again, kind of spans that My Plate and the Mediterranean diet in a fantastic way. This Harvard Healthy Eating Plant, again, suggests using healthy oils. It talks about more veggies and greater variety. It discusses drinking water right here instead of considering milk. So for individuals who can have milk, just limit it a little bit more. And I might agree with that. There's a lot of populations where consuming milk doesn't agree with them, either ethically, financially, intestinally, or it's just something that they don't want to consume because milk is a little bit inflammatory. So just know that if you enjoy milk and you're not having problems with it, just consume milk products that are going to be lower in lipids or fats. Also consume healthy proteins and healthy whole grains. So when we discuss these, think about what themes surfaced. Let me know if you have any questions as we are in this together. Just know that your dietary plan is different than someone else's, and both of them can be healthful and recommended. Have a great rest of your day.